Modifiers are a non-destructive, non-permanent way to work with objects that form a core part of the Blender workflow. To add a modifier to an object, first click on the object and then go to the Modifiers tab, and select the modifier you wish to add from the dropdown. Timestamps for the specific modifiers are in the description. Subdivision surface, commonly shortened down to subsurf. This modifier will subdivide the mesh's faces by a given factor, making it more detailed and smoother overall. It's common to use this modifier for a higher fidelity model, since in the initial stages it's easier to edit the low poly mesh first and then tweak the higher res mesh later on. The options you'll care about are pretty simple, since you generally only need to care about the level's viewport and render settings. Both of these dictate the amount of times the faces of the mesh will be divided up, with the former being how much it's done in the viewport, where you edit your models, and the latter being how it will appear when rendered, which you will generally not do when making assets for games. For models exported to be used in games, you should worry about the level's viewport setting, but more on this in a future video. Mirror pretty much does what it says on the tin. Will mirror your selected object. It should be noted that the mirroring occurs using the origin of the object, denoted by the yellow dot when an object is selected, as the center where everything else is mirrored from. There's a lot more options here on mirror than we got on subsurf, but there's only really two that you'll care about with mirror. Axis, the axis upon which the mirroring will occur, and clipping, whether the verts that meet at the center should merge into one vert or not. Axis is self-explanatory, but generally speaking, you'll have clipping selected for an object if you plan to make it one continuous object instead of one made up of separate meshes. Solidify will get your mesh and give it thickness. Generally only used to give flat faces some thickness, but it does have some other more niche uses. The only option you should care about here is thickness. Setting this will determine exactly how thick the solidify modifier makes your faces. Some general tips. Modifiers can be applied by clicking on the drop down arrow on it and clicking apply, but keep in mind that it can only be done from object mode. It should also be noted that you want to try and keep modifiers active as much as possible, only applying when you are absolutely sure. You will never need to go back. The order of modifiers is super important since it dictates the order in which they are applied to an object. You can change the order of modifiers by clicking and dragging on the handle present on the right hand side of the modifier. So modifiers are very useful tools that you should learn if you want to get far with Blender and its workflow. This has only been a brief overview of the most common ones, but there are plenty of other modifiers that exist which are useful in their own right and warrant your exploration of them when you have the time.